Have you ever wondered why some men walk into a room and immediately pull attention toward them without saying a single word? They're not the most handsome. They're not the funniest. They don't even seem to try. Yet, something about them makes women turn their heads, makes people fall, makes the air shift like gravity just moved. And then you look at yourself. You texted first. You showed up. You cared. You did everything society told you was right. And what did you get? A read message with no reply. A distracted gaze. A quiet ache in your chest that kindness was enough. Why? Because attraction doesn't come from effort. It comes from energy. It's not about what you do. It's about how you show up. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote in The Prince, "A wise ruler does not need be loved. He only needs to be feared. And if he must choose, he should always choose fear." Love, attention, desire, they all obey the same law, the law of psychological power. The harder you try to be good, the faster you're forgotten, because the world doesn't reward emotional effort. It rewards those who command presence without needing permission. In this article, I'll share with you 5 cold, strategic rules, not to turn you into a manipulator, but to wake you up from a lie. This isn't about attracting women. This is about reclaiming your internal authority. This is about no longer being the man who's available to everyone but valued by no one. Because women don't chase kindness. They chase power. Not the loud kind, not the aggressive kind, but the calm, silent authority of a man who chooses himself every day, with or without applause, with or without being chosen. If you've ever felt invisible no matter how much you gave, if you've ever watched your presence fade in the eyes of someone you were always there for, then this is your turning point. This is the moment where you stop begging for attention and start learning how to build the gravity that makes attention inevitable. Attraction is not a trick. It's a consequence. And if this message is a part of you that's been waiting quietly in the dark for someone to say it, then don't just read this passively. Engage with it. Let it sink in. Because you don't need to be chosen when you've already awakened. Are you ready? Rule 1. Power is the true magnet. Let's destroy a lie that most men have been fed since birth. You were taught that if you wanted love, you had to earn it. That being nice, being present, being emotionally open would make you attractive. That if you gave enough, you'd eventually be chosen. So you tried. You texted first. You listened when she vented. You adjusted. You softened. You waited. You made her laugh. You made time. You gave more than you got. But she didn't chase you. She chased the guy who didn't try half as hard. The one who wasn't always available. The one who didn't explain himself. The one who walked away. And you were left asking a question most good men eventually ask. What did I do wrong? Here's the truth. You confused affection with attraction. You thought effort was the currency of love. But in the world of human desire, effort isn't king. Power is. Not power over her. Not manipulation. Not control rooted in fear. But the kind of power that Machiavelli wrote about. Inner sovereignty. That energy of a man who needs nothing, explains nothing, and asks for no permission to exist. A man who knows who he is even when no one is clapping. That's the man people chase. Because in a world full of men trying to prove themselves, trying to please, trying to be liked, the one who doesn't care whether he's accepted feels like a force of nature. You see, real power doesn't beg for attention. It bends a room in its direction without saying a word. It's the man who walks into a space and doesn't look around to see if he's noticed. He knows he's already felt. He knows his energy will echo even when he leaves. Machiavelli understood this principle in the political arena, but it applies just as deeply to personal dynamics. Power isn't always visible, but it's always sensed. When a man radiates calm, when he's composed under pressure, when he doesn't flinch in the face of rejection, when he doesn't seek validation, people can't help but lean in because they want to understand what he's anchored to. That man is not performing. He's just being. And here's the paradox. The more you try to be liked, the more you reveal that you're not sure if you're enough. And that uncertainty leaks through your words, through your posture, through every over-explained sentence and second follow-up text. But a powerful man doesn't adjust his identity to fit the moment. He doesn't mirror the room. He defines a room. He's not seeking approval. He's watching. He's observing. He's choosing. This subtle shift flips everything. Because women don't want to feel like the prize. They want to feel chosen by someone who doesn't need to choose anyone. Someone whose attention means something because it's rare, it's precise, it's earned. This kind of man doesn't overtalk. He doesn't overexplain. He doesn't rush to correct misunderstandings because his worth isn't negotiable. It's not a pitch. It's a presence. You don't become this man by pretending. You become him by subtracting. Subtract the need to please. Subtract the obsession with being liked. Subtract the desperation. What's left is a frame. What's left is weight. What's left is the man who knows he's enough, with or without the applause. In Machiavellian terms, he is a prince's own inner state, not ruled by emotion, not swayed by favor, but grounded, unmoved, dangerously calm. So if you want to become magnetic, start with this shift. You are not here to prove yourself. You are here to remember yourself. The power you seek isn't in what you give. It's in what you hold, what you reserve, what you choose not to say. And when you become a man who doesn't chase, who doesn't explain, who doesn't flinch, you stop being an option. You become the gravity. She doesn't chase you because you're better. She chases you because you've stopped chasing everything else. And in that stillness, in that refusal to shrink, you become. Rule 2, scarcity breeds desire. Have you ever noticed something strange? The people who are always around eventually fade into the background. And the ones who disappear, they haunt you. You don't remember the constant presence. You remember the sudden silence. That's not an accident. That's the law of scarcity. Machiavelli didn't need social media to understand this. He saw it in courts, in councils, in war rooms. He knew what is always available becomes invisible, and what is withdrawn becomes powerful. Because in the kingdom of human desire, absence is not a weakness. It's a weapon. Let me ask you directly, when was the last time your absence was truly felt? Not just noticed, but felt like something in the room shifted when you left? Most men will never know that power because they've been trained to be too accessible, too eager, too constant. They show up before being asked. They reply before they're needed. And then they wonder why they're taken for granted. But here's the brutal truth. Availability is the enemy of desire. When you're always there, you stop being a man. You become a utility, a predictable pattern, background noise, comfortable, harmless, forgotten. Now imagine this. 2 men meet the same woman. The first one is quick, eager. He replies within minutes, adjusts the schedule, stays up late just to talk. The second, he's calm, unhurried. He reads her message and takes his time, not because he's playing a game, but because he values his time more than her expectation. And suddenly, she starts to wonder, where is he? Why hasn't he replied? Did I say something wrong? And just like that, emotional tension begins. Not because he begged for it, but because he refused to give away his presence like a discount item. That's the game Machiavelli understood. Scarcity isn't cruelty. It's clarity. If your energy is always on tap, it's no longer a gift. It's tap water. The rare man is not rare by luck. He's rare because he knows how to reserve himself. He doesn't overextend. He doesn't overshow. He doesn't overgive. He lets the silence stretch because he knows the mind hates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, stories are born. Stories create emotion. Emotion creates obsession. And obsession creates value. But here's where most men ruin it. They disappear and return with nothing. No strength, no edge, no elevation. Just silence for the sake of absence. That's not scarcity. That's irrelevance. So let me be clear. Scarcity without substance is emptiness. You want to disappear? Fine. But when you return like a thunderclap, with presence, with posture, with gravity in your gaze that says, I wasn't avoiding you. I was refining me. That's what makes her feel your value. Not because you begged for it, but because she had to sit in the discomfort of missing you. And that discomfort, that space, that's where desire breeds. So ask yourself now, are you trying to be remembered while never giving her the chance to experience your absence? Because here's the Machiavellian law no one teaches young men. You are not forgotten when you walk away. You are forgotten when you never leave. Be the man who doesn't just enter a room. Be the one who's felt after he's gone. Don't just be present. Be missed. And when you're missed, you no longer need to chase. She's already halfway toward you, wondering what kind of man has the strength to be absent in a world addicted to being seen. Rule 3, mystery is a weapon. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever met someone who didn't reveal much, but somehow you couldn't stop thinking about them? It wasn't their words. It wasn't their gestures. It was what they didn't say. The pause in their voice. The way they looked at you, then looked away. The story that never quite finished. That's mystery. And mystery, when mastered, is not just attractive, it's powerful. Because in a world addicted to full disclosure, to over-explaining, to let me tell you everything about me by the second date, the man who holds back, who doesn't unfold himself immediately, creates gravity. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. He wrote, not for the desperate, but for the strategic, for men who knew that power lies not in noise, but in ambiguity. Because what people can't see, they project onto. They wonder, they guess, they obsess. And that obsession becomes emotional investment, not because you beg for it, but because you made them work for it. Think of it like this. There are 2 books. One is short, transparent, predictable, the kind you read once and forget. The other is layered. Each chapter reveals something unexpected. It doesn't hand you meaning. It invites you to search for it. Which one do you remember? Which one do you lend friends? Which one do you read again at 2 a.m. because you feel like you missed something the first time? That's who you must become. Not a blank slate, but a moving story, unfinished, undecodable. Because here's the truth. People do not fall in love with information. They fall in love with imagination. And when you overshare, when you spill everything to be understood, you rob her the chance to imagine you. You become defined, concrete, predictable. And predictability is safe, but safety kills desire. So ask yourself, why do you feel the urge to explain everything? To tell your whole story up front? To prove that you're deep, loyal, loving, committed? Is it truly confidence, or is it fear? Fear that if she doesn't know you fully, she might not choose you? Because that fear leaks through every over-detailed confession, through every just wanted to be honest monologue. And when that fear is felt, the attraction dies quietly. So here's the shift. Don't offer access. Offer layers. Let her earn the next sentence. Let her wonder what you meant. Let her sit in the quiet space between your words and build the story herself. Because the mind hates a vacuum. And when you leave just enough unsaid, she will fill it with her curiosity, her fears, her fantasies. And suddenly, she's emotionally investing into a story you never had to write. That is mystery, not silence out of awkwardness, but silence out of control. The confidence to hold your emotional truth like a blade, drawn only when it's time to cut. You don't have to be confusing. You don't have to lie. You don't even have to say less. You just have to say what matters. And leave the rest behind your eyes. Because that look you give and don't explain, that thought you have but don't share, that moment of stillness before you speak, it hits harder than any perfectly crafted sentence. Machiavelli would say, he who lets others see too much of himself gives them the weapons to undo him. So ask yourself, are you building tension or relieving it too soon? Are you offering mystery or trying too hard to be understood? Because a man who is understood too quickly is forgotten just as fast. Rule 4, control the frame. In every conversation you've ever had, every date, every argument, every flirtation, there was a frame being set, but chances are you didn't even realize it, because frames are invisible, and yet they decide everything. Who leads, who follows, who defines the rules, who breaks under pressure. And if you're not the one setting the frame, you're already living in someone else's version of reality. Machiavelli understood this on the level of kings and kingdoms, but applies just as ruthlessly in the smallest interactions. Because in his world, whoever controls the narrative controls the people. Let me make this real for you. 2 men walk into a room. One says, I hope they like me. The other says, I wonder if any of them are worth my time. Both are looking at the same people. but they are not living in the same psychological reality. One is seeking permission. The other is holding court. One is adapting. The other is defining. And women can feel this in the first 5 seconds of meeting you. They can feel it in your posture, your tone, your silence, the way you look at her, and don't flinch when she tests you. Because testing isn't just about flirtation. It's a subconscious attempt to measure your frame. Will you fold? Will you defend yourself? Will you adjust her world? Or will you bring her into yours? That's why the man who controls the frame never panics. He doesn't argue to win. He doesn't explain to be validated. He doesn't try to impress. He expects others to meet him where he stands, because his energy communicates one simple truth. I am the standard. And that's not arrogance. That's strategy. Look around you. The man who can stay calm when others get reactive. The man who doesn't raise his voice when challenged. The man who isn't thrown off when she says something designed to provoke. He wins, not by domination, but by not letting the other person shift his internal center. That's how you become a psychological fortress. And Machiavelli would say, a wise prince adapts his tactics, but never his principles. The weak man changes himself for every new interaction. He's overly agreeable. He tries to anticipate what others want from him. He becomes a social chameleon. And chameleons, they blend in so well, they're forgotten. But the man of frame, he bends the environment around him. He defines what is acceptable. He defines what is desirable. He defines what success means in the conversation. And people adjust without even realizing it. Let me ask you this. Have you ever left a conversation feeling like you gave too much? Like you were performing, auditioning, proving your worth? That's a sign you entered her frame. She was the evaluator. You were the candidate. But if you had walked in thinking, I am here to observe, to select, to decide if this interaction is worthy of me, everything would have changed. And no, that doesn't mean being rude, dismissive, or acting superior. It means walking with quiet certainty, not chasing approval, but carrying presence. It means holding eye contact, not to intimidate, but because your reality doesn't shake under scrutiny. Letting people feel the difference between you and every other man she's ever tested. Because here's the truth. Most men chase frame, but the one who owns it never has to run. She leans in, she softens, she adjusts, not because you force her to, but because you never moved an inch. So ask yourself, are you leading the dynamic or waiting to be led? Are you defining the terms of your interactions or hoping to be accepted into someone else's script? Because in a world where everyone wants to be liked, the man who doesn't audition becomes a director. And that's the man people remember. That's the man people chase. That's the man whose frame becomes a room itself. Rule 5. Emotional mastery is king. You can have power. You can be rare. You can be mysterious. You can even control the frame. But if you can't control your own emotions, you will lose control of everything else. Because the final battlefield isn't in the room. It's inside you. Machiavelli warned of this in his writings. He said, a prince who cannot master his passions cannot master his people. Because the man who is ruled by feeling is always vulnerable to being ruled by others. Let that sink in. Every time you lash out, react instead of respond, need her approval to feel like a man, you hand over the keys to your castle. You let the storm inside you become visible. And the second your emotions become visible, you're no longer the one holding power. You're the one being pulled by invisible strings. But what does emotional mastery really mean? It doesn't mean being cold. It doesn't mean suppressing your humanity. It means becoming the architect of your reactions. It means knowing that no one can shake you unless you allow it. It's the quiet confidence in a man's eyes when she tries to provoke him, and he just smiles, not out of sarcasm, but because his internal world is so unshakably grounded, he no longer flinches, because he knows who he is, no matter how loud the room gets. Ask yourself, have you ever said something in anger that destroyed the respect someone had for you? Have you ever shown too much too soon, just because your emotions demanded release? Have you ever lost composure and felt regret the moment the words left your mouth? then you know this truth already. Power without emotional control is a weapon with no safety. And in relationships, it's even more dangerous because women are deeply intuitive. They don't just hear your words, they read your energy. And when your emotions swing like a pendulum, she knows. She knows you're not safe within yourself. She senses that you're not anchored. And no one wants to build something real on unstable ground. But the man who is calm, the man who is patient, the man who is composed in the face of drama, he becomes a pillar, a shelter, a presence that is felt without ever needing to raise his voice. That's real power. And here's the paradox. The less you react, the more people react to you, because composure's commanding. It says, I don't chase highs. I don't fear lows. I choose how I feel. I choose when I speak. I choose when to reveal. That is dominance of the rarest kind. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you no longer took anything personally? What if rejection didn't sting? What if praise didn't inflate you? What if your emotional state became a fortress so solid, so sovereign, that no one's chaos could shake it? That is the essence of emotional mastery. And when you get there, the entire game changes. Now, you're no longer reacting to the world. You're shaping it. You're no longer chasing her attention. She's chasing your energy because she sees something in you that's rare. Not perfection, but peace. Not silence from weakness, but silence from command. Not indifference, but unshakable clarity about who you are. And that is the final form of attraction. The man who no longer needs to be desired becomes the one most desired. Because nothing is more powerful than a man who's already at peace with himself. No hunger, no desperation. Just calm, focused, grounded presence. A man like that doesn't get lost in the chaos of others. He becomes the stillness they reach for. So if there's one rule you remember from all of this, let it be this. Master your emotions, or you'll forever be a slave to those who can provoke them. Conclusion, don't be chosen. Become untouchable. You've made it this far, not because these rules were easy to hear, but because deep down, you knew they were already true. You felt it, the sting of trying too hard, the slow erosion of your value every time you overgave, the quiet humiliation of waiting for validation that never came. And now, you see it for what it is. It was never about looks, never about charm, never about doing more. It was about power, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't seek, the kind that doesn't chase but stands. Stand alone, stand still, stands untouchable. Because here's the truth. No one told you. Attraction is a consequence, not a strategy. You don't get chased because you follow a checklist. You get chased when you become a presence that cannot be replicated. A man who doesn't need the room because he's already built his own. A man who doesn't ask to be seen because he already sees himself with brutal clarity. A man who doesn't beg to be loved because he has chosen to respect himself so deeply that anything less than admiration feels like an insult. Machiavelli would tell you, to be feared is to be free. But this isn't about fear from others. It's about the fearlessness within. The fearlessness to walk away, withhold, say no, wait, observe, not react. That is the kind of man the world cannot manipulate. So ask yourself, have you been the storm, or have you been tossed around inside one? Have you moved with intention, or have you been moving just to be noticed? Have you been choosing, or have you just been hoping to be chosen? Because if you've only ever lived to be accepted, you've never truly lived as yourself. But that can end now, right here. You don't need permission to transform. You don't need applause to evolve. You don't even need closure. You just need a decision. That from this moment forward, you will no longer audition. You will no longer explain. You will no longer chase. Because a man who masters his energy, controls his frame, guards his mystery, and holds his emotions like a blade behind his back, that man is not just attractive. He is unforgettable. He is unbreakable. He is untouchable. So if this message pierced you, if it felt like truth cloaked in fire, then let it burn away who you used to be. Leave behind the boy who begged. Bury the man who waited. And walk forward as the one who commands, not with noise, not with force, but with presence. And if that's the path you choose, then take action, not for content, but for companionship on the road few dare to walk. Because from this point on, you're not here to be liked. You're here to be remembered. And not every man gets that luxury. Only the ones willing to burn.